Let's talk separation of powers. Separation of powers is a key principle of the United States Constitution. Our colonial forefathers had lived under a government where too much power was held by the king and parliament. When they went to create a new government, they wanted to make it so that no one person or group had too much power. The way they did this is by creating three parts of the government and gave each one different responsibilities. By spreading this out, they felt it would be much more difficult for the government to abuse the citizens' rights. Also, each branch could keep an eye on each other and keep them in check. We'll get to that later with an idea called checks and balances. So these are the three branches. We have the legislative, executive, and judicial. Let's start with the legislative branch. The main responsibility of the legislative branch is to make laws that apply to all citizens of the country. In fact, it gets its name from the Latin word leges, which means law. So its name is also its job. Our legislative branch is more commonly referred to as Congress. The United States Congress is actually made up of two chambers or houses. It's called a bicameral legislature. The first house or chamber is called the House of Representatives, and the second is called the Senate. All members of this branch are elected by their respective states, although there are different requirements and term lengths for each, but we won't get that deep today. What you do need to understand is that for a law to be passed, both the House and Senate must give their approval. The specific process for how a bill becomes a law will be discussed separate from this video. Most importantly, know that the legislative branch makes laws and consists of Congress, which is made up of the House of Representatives and the Senate. So how about the executive branch? Just like the others, the name of the branch explains its job. To execute means to carry out, so the job of this branch is to execute or carry out the laws of the country. The executive branch is actually made up of hundreds of thousands of people. The President of the United States is the head of the executive branch. You can think of him as a CEO of a company or a principal of a school. They direct how things operate, then delegate those responsibilities down to different parts of the executive branch. So at the top is the president. Below him he has his vice president, but just below them is his cabinet. The executive branch has many different departments that specialize in carrying out policies of their specific fields, such as the Department of Energy, the Justice Department, the Education Department, and so on. The heads of each of these departments report directly to the president, and they make up his cabinet. They also advise him on important decision making. This makes the higher levels of the executive branch. The third branch is the judicial branch. Its job is to evaluate and interpret the laws. It's made up of our court system. So when you hear judicial, think of the word judge. The way they interpret laws is through the court system. When someone argues how a law is supposed to be viewed or whether a law has been violated, it is up to the courts to settle any disputes. It is through these decisions on these disputes that people understand how laws are to be viewed. This idea is called judicial review. The highest authority in the judicial branch is the Supreme Court. The court's job is to determine whether laws or actions follow the guidelines of the Constitution or if they violate the rules within it. The Constitution is the highest law in the land, so theoretically no laws should go against what it says. There are also different types of courts. There's civil court and criminal courts. We'll get into the details of those in class. But to summarize, our founding fathers used the idea of separation of powers to prevent the government from overstepping its bounds and abusing its citizens. The way they did this is by splitting important powers and responsibilities between the three separate branches. The legislative branch, which makes laws, the executive branch, which carries out the laws, and the judicial branch, which interprets the laws and helps make sure that they are carried out in appropriate ways.